Hello, this is Robert Kiyosaki, and I'm excited about talking to my favorite country in the whole world, Aussie. And as we always say, Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. And I'm very excited about talking to George's group here because I love property, and I just really love Australia. I went to Australia for the first time in 1972 to play rugby union. I know this looks like a league shirt, but I played union with the stripes going this way like a convict. But anyway, I love Aussie, 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 and it's an exciting time. And Aussie really is the lucky land. It really, really is, except for your government. I can't believe they lock you down for so long. I mean, that's horrible what they're doing to you. But anyway, it doesn't hamper the value of property and all this. And I've often thought about moving to Aussie and living there just because it is the lucky land. And as I said, I went there in 1972 to play rugby. We played Bondi, Randwick, and Newcastle. And needless to say, we lost every game. Americans are not good rugby players, but we did drink a lot with you guys. So it was one of the best trips of my life. And after that, I used to go to Australia. I went to the 5 capital cities and just loved the country. And I bought property in Bondi, Rushcutters Bay, and in Brisbane. And so I'm a little bit familiar with your property. And I hate to say this, the trouble with Aussie property, you've got to be 10 times smarter than Americans. It is really much easier for Americans to invest in America. Let me give you one big reason. In America, I can get a fixed loan for 30 years, 3%, 2%. And you guys are carrying at 5%. To me, that's too risky. But I still bought property. Another thing that was different between America and Aussie was your real estate agents always talked about negative gearing. Now, to an American, that made no sense. And I got myself into a lot of trouble with Aussie real estate agents because I said I would never negative gear. Now, it doesn't mean I didn't buy. I just would not negative gear. And so what that did for me was when I was investing in Aussie, again, in Rushcutters Bay, King's Cross, and Brisbane, I had to be smarter to invest in Aussie. So I'm very happy when I was talking to George there. I love his formula. He's a very smart man, and he and I agree on most of the things we talk about here. So let me talk about real estate right now. Like I said, in Australia, you've got to be smarter. Now, the good news is Aussie is the lucky land. Number one, I say to every Aussie, is property is only as good as there's jobs. Let me say it again. If there's no jobs, property is no good. So a lot of your property value depends upon what you export and people coming in. And with Aussie shut down with COVID and all this stuff, you've really got to be careful on where your jobs come from. Because I've been to Darling Harbour and all this stuff. They're just beautiful places. But if the tourists don't come in, it affects jobs. And up in the north is what are your exports? The sheep and hay and coal and things like this. So always remember, real estate is only as good as there's jobs. So let me talk about something right now because I'm very concerned. The U.S. government, and it's the U.S. government that's doing this, our Federal Reserve Bank and the U.S. Treasury, they're criminals right now. The U.S. Fed, just yesterday, the Fed Chairman Powell and Yellen, our Treasury, were seen talking together. That's criminal. Let me say, ladies and gentlemen, when I sat there, I'm in America, I'm watching our Fed Chairman and our Treasury Secretary talking like this, that's criminal. That's called collusion. They should not talk together. They should be completely independent. But they're up to something right now. So again, be very careful. The market's an all-time high. They keep dropping interest rates. And I don't know how many trillion they've printed so far just to keep this thing from crashing. So they're still printing and printing and printing. They estimate they're going to print some more just to keep the stock market up here and keep the thing from crashing. So if you're going to be a property investor, hang out with George. You have got to be smarter no matter what you do today, because this market is an all-time high. It doesn't mean that I have stopped buying. I'm still buying. My partner, Ken McElroy, and I, we bought a property in Austin, Texas. It was $31 million. Beautiful property, but we had to be smarter. We had to work harder. And the reason we could buy a $31 million property is because Kenny is also a builder. So he can take the property, take it from 31 million and step it up to 45 million. Let me say that again. Today we bought it, well, last month we bought it for 31 million, but our plan is to take it to 45. That's our plan. That's how we're going to make our money. So it depends upon what skills. Can you take a property and fix it? So hang out with George. Please, please, please. This is a very spooky time in the marketplaces right now. As you know, China's got their finger on the trigger. Our guy Biden, the most disgusting retreat out of Afghanistan I've ever seen. I just can't believe what's going on. So be very careful because the markets are really, really toppy. So I'm going to show you what I think is the most important thing for right now is this. All of us, Aussie or American or whatever, rich or poor, smart or stupid, male or female, we all have 4 intelligences. There's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual intelligence. So in today's market, with markets at all-time high, interest rates at all-time low, and our governments are pumping trillions of dollars into the economy, you've got to be smarter on your 4 intelligences. So hang out with George, okay, because you've got to get smarter mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So let me explain mentally. Mentally means you've got to look at the property objectively. You've got to look at the numbers, just the facts, just the facts. Mentally, what are the facts? What is the rent? How much is the stamp duty? How much is this? How much is that? Just the facts. What gets people in trouble is when emotions kick in. Oh, this is a good deal. When I was in Aussie, this is about 20 years ago, when I was buying property there, I used to get into fights with your property salespeople, your estate agents, because they would actually tell the Aussie people to negative gear. Say, don't worry, buy this property because the property will go up. So let's say your mortgage payment is $1,000, but your rent is only $800, so you're losing 200 Aussie a month. And what the agent would tell you, don't worry, the property will go up. That's when your emotions kick in. And every time somebody said, when I was in Aussie, the property will go up in value, I said, well, you guarantee it. And of course they can't. So please remember this. I don't care what you're investing in, but especially property in Aussie, you've got to hang out with guys like George who know the numbers. Get the real numbers, the facts, Jack. And then you've got to check your emotion, because if you get too excited, or for many people, they're too afraid, and they're afraid of making a mistake, that's a negative emotion here. So get the numbers, keep your emotions in check, and then you take action. So like I said, even though in America the property values are really high and $31 million is a lot of money, we knew that physically we could improve the property and take the value up to maybe about 45 million. We know that, we're not emotional about it, and we can do that here. So those are some of the tricks. And the spiritual part here is this, is what are you investing for? So one of the reasons I invest in property is because spiritually I don't like paying taxes. It just bugs me. So I use debt and I pay no taxes when I'm investing. So those are some of the things I think about here. But spiritually is that my wife Kim and I, we now own about 8,500 rental properties. Spiritually, we're never going to sell this thing. We don't have children. So our plan for our property is we're going to put it into what's called a CRT, a charitable remainder trust. And we'll package it in all this. All of this, brain work, physical activity, and all this goes into a trust. And long after Kim and I are gone, that trust will still provide cash flow for the people out there. It'll do good work for many, many people. So if you're just in it for the greed, that greed is more here, but this here is a spiritual side of here. Why are you investing it for? You're just going to make money? Or are you passing it on to your children or your grandchildren? There's got to be some kind of love in this whole thing here. So those are very, very important things here to remember, especially in this marketplace today. And as I'm talking to you today, right now, the U.S. stock market is crashing. So many people are panicking. What's going to happen? And naturally, all the soothsayers get up there. They say, oh, don't worry, it's going to bounce back up. It's going to bounce back up. It's going to bounce back up. And they're trying to calm you down over here emotionally. When you feel fear, fear is okay. Fear is really good. But you've really got to get in check and then check back in. Talk to a guy like George. What am I concerned about? What are the real numbers here? What can I do? Will this affect my long-term plans for this property here? So the U.S. stock market is crashing. I'm watching our television station. They say, don't worry, the Fed is going to pump more money into the system. But that's the problem. That's the problem. Everybody has got so used to, all over the world, for the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank, this guy Jerome Powell, to just keep pumping more money. The Royal Bank of Australia, they just keep pumping more money into the economy. The Bank of England, the Bundesbank in Germany, they just keep pumping all this money in. They keep the interest rates low and to drive the property values up. They're terrified of a crash here. So the stock market today just started to crash big time. So what happens is people panic. So let me say something else to you. Listen to George. Take his classes. Follow him. Listen to his logic. Keep your emotions in check. It's okay to be afraid. Probably what's worse than being afraid is being greedy. That's the worst. I can't lose. Every time I hear somebody say, I can't lose, they're going to lose. Okay? Because you can always win and you can always lose. So be very, very careful. This is a fourth intelligence. This is probably the most important of all intelligences when it comes to real estate. So let me explain why emotional intelligence is the most important. The problem with real estate is this. It's not liquid. If I buy a stock, let's say Apple Computers or Apple, I make a mistake, I can sell it today. I can buy Microsoft, I can sell it today. But the trouble with real estate is not liquid. You can't sell it if you make a mistake. So if you make a mistake and you bought it up here and it's going down this way, you might be riding the Titanic down. You'll just keep going down with it because you can't get out. So it's very important to ask George this question. Okay? Let's say I make a mistake. Let's say I buy this property. Let's keep the numbers easy, $1 million. And it starts to drop like this. Have plan B. Talk to George about plan B. Let's say I make a mistake. Let's say China decides to go bust or whatever happens, because I know you guys are dependent upon China. They go bust out there. If it starts to go down, what's plan B? So let me say it again. We just borrowed $31 million. $31 million is a lot of money. The good thing is it's free money. They just give it to you. If you have a good project and you have a good mental, emotional, spiritual plan. We showed the banker how we're going to take the property from 31 to about 45. The 45 valuation is dependent upon how much rent can we increase. So the good thing about Austin, Texas is possibly one of the hottest real estate property markets in America today. So even though it's very expensive, the good news is people are evacuating Washington State, Seattle, Portland, and California, and they're all rushing to Texas because California, Oregon, and Washington are extremely liberal. And people right now don't like what's happening. In San Francisco right now, whole gangs are going around. They can rob stores, and the police won't touch them. They just passed a law that if you steal less than, let's say, $1,000, they can't send you to jail. So the gangs are rolling all over San Francisco, one of the most beautiful cities of the world. You know, San Francisco is very much like Sydney. And they're destroying San Francisco, so people are moving out of California, and their favorite destination is Austin, Texas. So the prices went up in Austin, so we had to go in there and take a look at it. And at that moment, we found a property for $31 million. And our question is, can we get it up to a valuation of 45? And the way we're going to get it from 31 to 45, we're going to put improvements in it and increase the rents. So we had a plan how to do it. And it doesn't make any difference if it's 31 million or 300,000. The plan is always the same. Let me say it again, though. In Aussie, you've got to be smarter. You've got to be smarter than Americans. Just simply because your interest rates and your loan values are short. I can borrow for 30 years. I got 30 years to fix it up. Our loan requirements are easy. They give us lots of money. And our governments are not as strict as Aussie. I mean, I can't believe you guys got locked down all this time. You know, I talked to a friend who was there. He was locked up for a long time. I can't believe that. You know, Americans wouldn't put up with that. So that's a kind way of saying that Aussie is more like California, Oregon, and Seattle. Aussie is more left of them, more liberal. So when I look at a country, it's called country risk. I want to know how liberal is the government. How liberal is your government? And Aussie is extremely liberal. You're very, very kind people, very kind. You treat everybody well. You know, I often said if I was going to be homeless, I'd be homeless in Aussie, because even though I was lying on the street, you guys would find a meat pie and stuff it down my mouth, you know, because you're so kind. But the problem is your liberal laws make it hard to be a conservative or to be a capitalist. So keep those things in mind here. You still live in one of the greatest countries on earth, Aussie. But you've really, really got to be careful, smarter. You have got to be smarter than Americans. So that's why I'm really happy to be speaking for George, because his plan is similar to my plan. You have got to be smarter. You've got to be smarter here, smarter emotionally, smarter physically, and smarter spiritually. This is about taking care of Aussie, taking care of the land, taking care of your tenants if you rent it out. It's about being really a good person here too. So those are the things I like to talk to you about, because I can talk to you about cash flow and all those things. George is better at that than me. Another thing I would like to say is this: have a partner. You want somebody to talk to. I'm only here because I had a smart wife, Kim. She is really, really smart. In fact, she's most of my friends say she's 10 times smarter than me when it comes to property. And she is. She loves property. You know, our property in King's Cross was an exciting property. You know, I used to go into King's Cross for the entertainment. You know, I sat there going, you know, and you Aussies are so kind. So, oh, the criminals here at King's Cross are so dangerous. I said, no, your criminals are lightweight. You know, come to New York or something. Those are real criminals, you know. But it's a different country. It's a different land. It's a different spirit. But that means you have to be smarter. You have to be smarter than Americans. Your mortgages are different. Your laws are different. And I'd be very careful on negative gearing, because we're right now at the top of a market. They expect more, Americans are expecting our Federal Reserve Bank and our Treasury to print more money. They're going to keep the interest rates low. They're trying to drive real estate prices higher. It's good, but you've got to be smarter. So that's kind of my message. Aussies are very smart. You have 4 different intelligences: mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. So I wish you all the best out there in your investing future, but have not only a partner, but a great mentor. You know, George and I talk quite often, and when I talk to him, he knows what he's talking about. He's better at me in Aussie real estate because I don't invest there anymore. But I'll say it again, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it again. In Aussie, you've got to be smarter than Americans because your laws are actually tougher. I mean, not your laws, but your country risk is harder, but your government is more liberal. Okay? So take care. Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. And I'm wearing my rugby league shirt. I should have worn my rugby union shirt. You know, I played rugby in Bondi and Randwick and Newcastle. We lost every single game. It was one of the best experiences of my life. Love your country. Great, great people. It's a rich country, a lucky country, but get smarter. Thank you very much. Okay, so let me go back. I'll give you the pitch for Rich Dad and why we do it. In 1996, my wife Kim and I came up with this board game here. It's a cash flow board game. That's my yellow Ferrari out there. And this here is what's called the rat race, and this is what you go to school for. You go to school, you get a job, you get stuck in the rat race. And outside here is called the fast track. In the real world, there really is a fast track. It's called the accredited investor. In America and in most parts of the world, if you are not substantial, you have not enough money, or you don't have enough education or experience, you cannot invest out here. So that's why in 1996, Kim and I created this board game here. And when you go to college or you go to school or you graduate from technical college, this is where you get stuck here. You go to work, just keep paying taxes here. So this was 1996, and this is what made our program so different here is this is the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad here. This came out in 1997. Okay? This is called a financial statement. Now, when I go to my banker to borrow $31 million, I've got to have a financial statement. You know, if I go to the banker and say, well, I don't have a financial statement, I have a tax return and I have a bank statement, they won't talk to you. So the key, my way of saying it here, for you to get from here to here requires this here. So that's why we created the cash flow board game. And these are some of the differences here. There's three parts to financial statements all over the world. They're always the same. There's an income statement. It's oftentimes called a P&L. This is called a balance sheet, assets and liabilities. And this here is called the statement of cash flow. All over the world, it's the same. Now, the reason this is important is this, the facts. What are the facts? So when you look at the facts here, I said, okay, I got this here, I got this here, this here, this here, this cash flow. So the mistake that people make is they call their house an asset. But if you look at the statement of cash flow, their home is here, and the cash flow pattern is going this way. In other words, every month your money is flowing to the bank. But if I buy a rental property, this is the difference. It flows into my income statement. So this is a liability, this is an asset. So the reason my wife and I are rich is we only focus here. One more thing is when you listen to the language of rich people and poor people always talk about how much money am I making and how much are my expenses. How much money and how much are my expenses. The rich always talk about balance sheet. What's on your balance sheet? So the reason my wife and I created the cash flow board game, this is in 1996, was to take your brain and put it down here. So when you're listening to George, George is taking your brain out of here and putting it into the balance sheet. Now, the reason I didn't like negative gearing, because you'd buy a rental property and you still lose money. Negative gearing. You buy a property. So let's say my rent was $1,000 a month, but my rent was $1,000 a month, but my income was only $800. I'm losing $200. In America, we tried the same thing. When I first started investing in real estate, the real estate agents would tell me, "Oh, don't worry, you're only losing $200 a month." I said, "Only? Only?" I said, "No. But in America, the same as in Aussie, they always counted on the price of the asset to go up. And that's fine as long as let's say I buy a house for $100,000 and next year it's worth $150,000, the $200 a month, maybe it makes sense, but never. So when I first started in real estate, if let's say I made $200 a month, another property I lost $200 a month. My question is this to you. If I'm losing $200 a month, how many properties can I afford? None. And if I'm making $200 a month, how much can I afford? Well, as much as I can get. So when Kim and I went to Aussie and we started buying property, we only looked for properties that put money in our pocket from here to here, here to here. And the estate agent said, "Oh, don't worry, you're only losing $200 a month." I said, "No, I don't lose money." So that's why I'm saying in Aussie, you've got to be smarter. Again, there's three parts to a financial statement: income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flow. So when you're playing this cash flow board game, your hands are moving, doing the math, very simple math. If you can add, subtract, and that's all you need. But you've got to know where to put the numbers. So that's why the cash flow board game, it's all over the world. There's cash flow clubs all over the world here. So this is important here. Now this is the other part about it here. This was book number 2 in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's called the cash flow quadrant. So George and I were talking about this. This stands for insider. People think it stands for investor. No, it stands for insider. Inside investor. E stands for employee. I got a job. I'm a clerk. I'm a banker. I'm a whatever, truck driver. Or I can be a doctor, a lawyer, or a computer programmer, or something like this. Self-employed. E and S. Most people go to school to be E's or S's. This was my poor dad. This is my rich dad here. B stands for big business. It also stands for brand. Now the thing I love Aussie so much, it was in Aussie, our company name was Cash Flow. And this Aussie guy came up to me and says, "You idiot, your brand isn't cash flow. People hate cash flow because they haven't got any." I said, "So what's our brand?" He says, "Rich Dad." So it was in Aussie that we changed the name of our company from Cash Flow Tech to Rich Dad. And a brand is what guys like Warren Buffett and Packer and those guys invest in. They want brands. They'll invest in Apple. They'll invest in Microsoft. They'll invest in BP and stuff like this. But if you're just a small guy and you're Freddy's Pizza Shop, you're not a brand. And generally a brand has 500 employees or more. In the tax law of America, you have to have 500 employees here. And I stands for investor, but these guys invest also, but most of them invest in shares, bonds, ETFs. I don't know what else you call those things. They invest from the outside. The moment you go into real estate, you become an inside investor. That's why you've got to be smarter. So I only invest from the inside. I own no stocks. I own no shares. I don't do that because I'm a capitalist. I create my own assets out here. Like, not only did I buy property, I also started 2 companies this year. So although I have shares, they're shares of my company because I am an inside investor. Those are the differences. So in 1996, we created the cash flow board game. We played it in Aussie many, many times. There's a lot of cash flow clubs there. There's still cash flow clubs going there and all that. But it takes, the reason this works is because it's not just mental, To play the cash flow board game requires all 4 intelligences. You see, you can know the answer, but you still have to do something. So you have to fill in the numbers here. When you're filling in the numbers and you're erasing and all this stuff, your mental, emotional, and things, you're all getting smarter. So games are the better teachers because they involve all four intelligences: mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. So that's why games are the best teachers. I learned about investing playing Monopoly. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. So when I was a kid, and my rich dad had little green houses, and I was growing up, and I would help him with his green houses. And then in 1967, he bought the Red Hotel. That Red Hotel is still there in Waikiki Beach. It's called the Hyatt Regency. So you have to have a plan also. 4 green houses, Red Hotel. Rich Dad doesn't own the hotel, he owns the land. So Rich Dad worked his plan. So as a young man, I understood that. And that's why Kim and I created the cash flow board game, because it involves all 4 intelligences, and you can have fun learning. Most important thing, if you lose money, it's only paper money. That's the most important thing. Lose, lose, lose. You get smarter. But the reason so many people are not rich is because they went to school and they're taught if you make a mistake, you get fired or you lose everything here. The purpose of the cash flow board game is move your brain over here, make mistakes, and lose, 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 because you get smarter, smarter, smarter. That's how I got smarter. So Kim and I created this game in 1996. So the final thing, I want to show you this here. This is what Kim and I do. Let me show you this here. So this here is my sketch of a financial statement, income, and I'll show you the statement of cash flow, balance sheet. This is, I started, my first investment was an $18,000 unit in the island of Maui. I wish I'd kept it. But back then, it was a lot of money, 18,000 bucks. So I put $200, it was a $2,000 down, 10% down, so I put it on my credit card. So I bought my first property. And since then, I just kept investing, made a lot of mistakes, lost some money, made some money, but I got smarter. So today, let me explain how I make my money. So let's say I have a business. So let's say it's a Rich Dad business here. It's an asset to me. And let's say it puts money here, income. And let's say let's get the numbers, it's $1 million. If I just keep that money, the first line item expense is tax. So let me show you the tax consequences here. And I know you're going to say, well, this is not true in Aussie. It's true in Aussie. It's the same all over the world. If I make $1 million as an employee, I'm going to pay 40% in taxes. So $400,000 goes to taxes. If I'm a doctor or a lawyer or a small falafel shop owner, I make $1 million, I'm going to pay 60% in taxes. So $1 million here, I'm going to pay $600,000 in taxes. If I make money here as a Rich Dad company or a big business, I'm going to pay 20% or $200,000. And as a professional inside investor, 0. So let me tell you how I go from 20% to 0% here in taxes. And this is true all over the world. You can't do this here in Aussie. I hear it all the time. So the way it works is, here's $1 million. If I do nothing, and let's say I'm an employee, they're going to take $400,000 right off the top here. So what I do instead, and this is where real estate comes in, I borrow $4 million. So I have $4 million in debt here. So I take the property up, borrow 4, that gets my real estate, this is real estate here, it's now 5 million. So let me explain this to you. 1 million, borrow 4, it becomes 5 million. And because it's $5 million, I get to appreciate, depreciate, and amortize this, not that. And because this has so many losses to it, 0 tax. But you need a good accountant and all that stuff. There's a book called Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. And my partner, Ken McElroy, he has 3 books, ABCs of Real Estate Investing. He has ABCs of Property Management and Advanced Guide to Finance. This is the Advanced Guide. So let me repeat again. I make $1 million here. I called Kenny up, my partner. I said, Kenny, I need $4 million. That means he has to find something that we can borrow $4 million against. And once we have $4 million, it steps up the basis of the property to $5 million. And there are the tax laws, and this is true all over the world. You appreciate, depreciate, amortize it, zero tax. All that money comes into my pocket. Thank you very much, government. Okay, so that's the power of financial education. I want to thank George for inviting me here. Keep studying, keep learning, find good partners. And the most important thing is keep your education up and do only business with good, solid, honest people. Thank you very much. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Oi, oi, oi.